All right, welcome back, everybody. You can probably hear in my voice because if you listen to a lot of them, I'm slightly tired today. We have a snowstorm going on when we're recording this, and so I almost feel like I need to apologize in advance just for the sake of the tiredness in my voice. However, in the green room when we're talking with Rich, I can already feel the energy popping up, and I'm grateful, Rich, that you are here. I'm grateful that we were able to do this. I can feel almost the synergy starting, and we resonate. And just, I even it was funny because I was like, wait, pause. Let's let's make sure that we take this conversation into the recording because it was getting so good and so deep so quick. And I that's the one thing that I love about this podcast that we're doing. The narrative is that we can go quickly into our stories and we can talk about it. But before we get into that, first of all, thank you for taking the time out of your day. I greatly appreciate you doing that.
Pleasure.
All right, so let's get started with what we usually do, and then we'll jump into this meat that we were talking about in regards in the green room, and we'll actually kind of share some of that. Let's start with who is Rich?
All right. Well, Rich is Rich Perrotti. I'm 69 years old. I'm retired. That'll be part of the story. I was kind of forced into retirement in the sense that the woman who had been my lover, my partner, my mate for the past 25 years, uh, we met in the year 2000, and towards in my late 40s, and she was already 8 years older than myself. We had been a couple for a long time, and then, of course, what happened was with a series of illnesses and strokes, her health started to decline. So I moved her in here with me. Uh, in short order, I needed to leave. I was doing a consulting job with Google at that point because I'd been working in different fields of technology probably since the year 2000. Verizon with their FiOS and XM radio before they merged with XM satellite radio.
Mm.
Then moving into Google, et cetera. I had to leave because she needed 24/7 care, and I was really the only person who could give her 24/7 care. So I had the responsibility, the honor of being with her as she passed this past April. And of course, the problem, no, the problem is the fact that when you're in your late 60s, as I am, you kind of know that when you leave a formal job in the especially in technology, especially with the massive changes going on
Yeah,
right
so
now,
fast.
Tim, the odds of you stepping back into that at that point are extremely slim, no matter how well you were thought of. And that's exactly what I found myself in since this past April. The fact that I'm kind of a tiny bit adrift and trying to figure out exactly what my life story is going to unfold as we go forward.
Right.
So again, late 60s, worked in technology for the last 25 years, had a lot of chapters that have happened, but that's where I am right now. And
Yeah. Well, and the truth is too, as we look at AI and how fast AI is evolving, it's just I mean, 2 years ago, you wouldn't have even had a conversation about AI because it was on the edge of it, and you'd have to be really deep into it. And now everybody's talking about AI. So
I know,
technologies,
believe me, I have a presence that has grown organically on LinkedIn from nothing. Now I've got, people, 500 people following me, which is like, where did that happen? I wasn't even looking for it. And a lot of it is centered on staying human in the era where AI seems to be potentially sapping humanity away from us as people are making hard, cold, fast decisions. And as I talk about in LinkedIn all the time, it seems to be like pedal to the metal, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, no matter what, whether it's thinking or not. And people are being wounded, lost, hurt, confused, you name it. So we talk about that a lot on LinkedIn.
yeah, and it's pretty. I mean, this is a sidetrack here, but it's pretty amazing to me how powerful the relationships still are. Somebody said it this way about AI in the technology world: is that basically it's built on the corpse of everything that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that humans have done, that's how AI has been built. But we still have these ongoing relationships that take work, that take time, that take effort. And AI is never going to replace you from caring for your significant other. The AI can never do that. They don't have that. It just cannot happen. So that relationship is absolutely key in not only our businesses, but also in our homes. So I guess let's look at it this way, and we'll see where this conversation goes, because we were talking about a lot of things, and you've been tracking, you've been writing Christmas poems. That's the way that you track and journal. Forgive me. I think it was 40. You have 40 of these going. I forgot how many you said.
This is the one I just finished over this past weekend is year 48. I started in
48.
1978.
So you've been writing a poem, and for the 48 different ones. And that's, again, part of tracking, part of the journaling, part of keeping up with what has been going on. And I think that's a very, very crucial key in our personal development to be able to know. I want to jump into this and I'm not sure where the springboard is. So,
Funny, here's the funny part when I was looking back on it. So it's kind of got it wasn't intended that way, but things organically tend to evolve. And what I've discovered in looking back on it is, number one, it's tracked important phases of my life, because we tend to all get very philosophical or reminiscent at this time of year when we look back at the previous 12 months. So that's no exception, especially when you sit down in November, December and start to think about that, and you look at major events, whether it be relationships, marriages, divorces, death, things in your career, etc. So that becomes part of a summary that you start to think about. Number two, the other irony that I discovered is, since it started in 1978, the technological eras that have been tracked through the poems. Like when I first started doing poems, I literally sat at my kitchen table, handwriting it, then typed it on an IBM Selectric typewriter, brought it to an Instaprint shop to have it literally. I even have one of the very first copies, have it printed on green paper, and then folded into traditional Christmas cards, stick the stamp on, and mail them out. But then over short order, as we moved into the 80s, we had this thing called the PC revolution, where Thomas Watson with IBM was wrong when he said, why should we do individual personal
yep.
PCs? There are only going to be like 4 or 5 of them that ever needed for the entire world, which was obviously a big problem, a big misstatement. So, from that to working on PCs, to working on Macs. I was one of the very first Macs, a 512K Mac. Working on desktop publishing, I literally found over here. Here was the first card that I did, where I literally laid it out as for desktop publishing, which is, where could you ever previously do that before? Then moving into, I actually did video poems as things became popular, and even before personal phones. The first big phone obviously was the BlackBerry. That couldn't do any of this stuff. But digital video, I would actually go out and start recording ideas and turn them into videos that I would edit myself on my computer, and then burn them onto CDs and send out video CDs with the Christmas poem, and on and on. It just kept tracking the evolution of what was going on technologically, as it was also tracking what was happening with my life and my perspective on the things that had occurred to me over the past year.
So we've got a lot of things here that are going on. And here's what I would say is going to be the underlying question, because we have, and people that listen, we have them all ages. I mean, I know that there's several guys that are in their early 20s, just starting their lives, either being married or building relationships or having kids, or just in that early stage of family life, starting careers, things like that. We have people that listen, and then we also have people that are in their later years in life, in their late 60s, and they're at the other end of the life, and they're saying, well, I finished a couple of careers, but yet there is still things that I want to accomplish. And I mean, I talked with one woman that was listening, and she took on a whole new career of writing after being a teacher. I mean, like, there's so many different things that are incredible, but here's the underlying question: is what have we learned as we've walked through and tracked some of these things? What have we learned with our industries and businesses? What have we learned with our own personal lives? What have we learned with our families? That's kind of like the underlying question I think that everybody continues to ask. So when we look at this, I think the first thing, and this is how we tend to frame it, is what did we think was it going to be like? What did we think was going to happen? How did we think our lives, whether that was a professional or in our family, how did we think that they were going to lay out? And then what changed, what shifted? And honestly, it sounds like on this situation, when you were recording or actually writing all of these things, you didn't intend it to become historical. You didn't intend it to actually be something that you look back and tracked all this stuff, but yet that's what it has become. So what did you think when you were first stepping out to endeavor to do stuff? And frankly, what made you want to start writing on a yearly basis?
Well, again, it's when you start looking back at the major, what you, and again, I found it very important. We talked about this a little bit. Learn not to judge anyone else's responses to what happens in their lives. I mean, people can respond very differently to the death of a loved one per se, or some kind of event, whether you determine it to be celebratory or tragic. Again, it's your definition. The joke I make is, how can I know what's going on within you? I live in here and I barely know what's going on within here. It's hard enough to figure out in here. How am I ever going to possibly understand what you're seeing and how you're experiencing things? So in 1978, when I sat down, what was happening was, the event that triggered it off was my parents got divorced. It was a very ugly divorce where my father and I were screaming that we were going to kill the other person
Wow.
across the front lawn of our home at that point. And as the oldest of two children, my younger brother, who left to deceased in the 90s, and myself, um, I was the one that moved back in with my mother after I got done graduating from college from Rutgers, and kind of nursed her through a nervous breakdown as her whole world fell apart. So this poem that I wrote in 1978, especially when we're in our 20s, that's where I was at that point. I was 20, 22 years old. You have I found myself to have a tremendous blend of optimism and sarcasm, finding a real love-hate relationship with life, with the world, etc. And the poem was a way of trying to cross that, especially at a time when emotions run extremely high with the holiday season. As we're recording this now, we're in the heart of the holiday season. And again, a lot of people find this to be a very joyful time of year, and a lot of people find this to be a very stressful or dark time of year. Irony, especially where you live, I'm sure it gets dark incredibly early. Where you
Yeah.
live, there's very little daylight,
Yeah.
and that really affects people. So my poem, the poem I wrote in 78 was my way of kind of dealing with some feelings. I let a couple people read it, and they were like, "This is good." I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna print it up," and I always mail a card, so I'll stick it in the card and mail it. And then a few people the following year said, "Are you going to keep doing that?" I was like, "Oh, okay, I think I will." Funny thing is, again, the organic process of the whole thing, as I rolled on, I would mail out the cards. Again, it was early with, just traditional cards, poems stuck in on a piece of colored paper or white paper that I
Right.
had printed up. People would literally reach out to me, Tim, and say, "It's not Christmas for us until we receive your card and read your poem." I even had one family that I lost track of a long time ago say, "We have a tradition where we light the fire, we gather the kids around, and we sit and we read your poem out loud."
Mm.
And I mean, you don't intend those things to happen, but then again, when you release something into the world, you really have no idea how the world is going to react or process to it. So to hear the people telling me that this had meaning to them and had become part of their traditions, that was both joyful and fearful, because the joy is knowing that your work is being appreciated, it has meaning to people. It's also kind of awe-inspiring and fearful in the sense, like, holy smokes, I've got to keep this going.
Yeah.
And there's been times where the poem didn't come until literally the 22nd, 23rd of December. People, where's the card? Where's the poem? You know? And so, you're trying to process your life. You're trying to process the technology, depending on what you're doing, with all sorts of things, desktop publishing, cards, printing on your own printers, etc. You're trying to get them all out in the mail. You're trying to reassure people. You want to make sure that it's work that is worthy of your heart and soul, never mind everything else. So it's an interesting thing. It journals life, but it also journals where you are at that particular snapshot in your life, especially when it centers on events that are going on, whether they be happy or otherwise.
So your intent was originally just to process the chaos that was going on through that year. Why in the world would you want to share that with the world? That is something that's very personal. And the reason why I'm asking this question, because there's a lot of people that I know, that I talk with, when they go through chaos, the natural tendency, the natural reaction is to shut it down, keep it inside. We're not going to share this. You did something completely opposite of what society says is normal. And you shared that process. You shared that whole aspect of authentically going through how you're processing the chaos that's literally going on right at that time.
Well, here's the thing. I have always been a person, even from when I was a small child, who had early on in my life, it was very religious, very Catholic as I was growing up, and it was always a very spiritual bent. Even after religion kind of evolved into spirituality, So I've been a person who, on and off, and now for the last decades, and on all the time, daily meditation, daily sitting and trying to get myself centered, journaling. I have literally boxes and boxes of old journals, excuse me, that I write a page every day, and I never prejudge what I'm going to write. It's like whatever comes out, and
Mhm.
I just write it in the page that way. So for me, there's always been a clearing process, finding out for me the way I've determined to see things. And again, understanding that this is not everybody. This is absolutely not everybody. As I said, I have hard enough time figuring out what's going on with me. This is part of me figuring out what's going on with me, how I'm really feeling about it, where other people, I have no idea. I figured let me let it out into the world because we may not react or create the same way, but we do share an awful lot of common experiences in life, whether we designate them to be joyful, tragic, again, whatever word you want to put on it. So I decided to put it out there because I've been having these kinds of conversations with close friends, with advisors, spiritual advisors that I'd grown up that have floated into my life at different periods. That when the poem came out, I was like, okay, maybe people might find some value in it. And at least if they're my friends or people I know, this may give them a little bit of understanding of where I'm at and what's going on with my particular world, my perspective.
So you started with that part of it, and then it kind of now has transitioned into where it's correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's like an outreach. It's a way that you give back to the community, right? And you do that so authentically. So there's definitely an advantage to that, and the way that people receive that. And we've seen this over and over again with our stories and with the interviews that we've had. When people respond, or how can I say this? When people share authentically, people respond because of that authenticity and because of how real those emotions are within that time frame, within that the message that's being shared. It's not doesn't fall flat. And so there's a lot of you can feel the emotion come through in both the voice as well as within the situation. So what what has been your learning experience sharing throughout these years? Because I mean, like you said, you've been in technology, you've watched how things have changed dramatically, and then in a relationship, and then the loss of a close loved one. What have you learned that has been most valuable for your life as you've processed, whether it was through the journaling or through the poems?
The one thing, okay, so the very first thing that I understood was energy will match energy. So your intent, you can't hide where your heart is. You can't hide what your emotional, energetic intent is. So if you're going to be authentic when you write something or express something, whether it's this way in the way you and I are doing right now, or whether it's in the paper will absorb your energetic intent. And when people read that again, and I can only go by what people have shared with me, the importance just has come in their life. I didn't do that because I needed, critique back in that sense. I didn't need to know that this made their day or whatever. They were going to do whatever they were going to do, whether I heard about it or not. But energy matches energy. And I'm sure that, in your professional career, you've seen that whether it's interacting with somebody via letters, because, at the age I'm at, we used to do letters, pen pals and things like that traditionally with handwriting, whether it's through email, whether it's through walking into an office space. In the past, I was a trainer for Verizon when they were growing their Fios optical, fiber optic internet. Occasionally, I'd have to travel all throughout, especially the New York State and New York City region. I would do trainings for hundreds of people, massive ballrooms where I was doing training. And I discovered that, if you carry fear into that, it's just red. The audience immediately senses the fear. So there's no difference whether it's on a piece of paper, Tim, where you're actually putting your emotions out there, expressed in a poem or an email or a letter, or you're appearing one on one with another person, or in a room where you're doing a training for several hundred people or a small group. For example, I also had to train people to go out and do door to door sales when Verizon was trying to spread their fiber optic service into the metropolitan area. And if you ever had to do things like this, you know that by and large, the people that do door to door sales are either very young, this is the way they're getting their feet wet in the business world per se, or they may be a lot older because this is their fallback position when everything else is kind of crapped out on them at that
Mhm.
point. Well, you can't make judgments on that. You just got to put out the only thing you have under your control is the energy and the intent that you're bringing as you're going into that experience. Again, whether it's written, whether it's in person, verbal, etc. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned. I've learned that if you're honest, if you put out there good intent, the odds are that it will be answered back in kind in any way, shape, or form, whether you hear about it or not. But don't judge. That's the other thing I've learned, is not to judge, because judgment kind of infects that. It kind of warps that whole experience at that point. It's almost like you've like put a good note out there, and then in the middle of the good note, you've rang a clinker with that judging.
Clash.
And it's like, wow, what the heck was that?
Right, right, right. So, okay, what would you say to somebody who wants to be able to put out that good energy, be able to be confident, not to have that fearful spirit, but yet struggles with that? And whether that is either in the training, and I know that you probably have run into that even with the door-to-door sales type, I'm sure you've run into it multiple times. But what would you say to somebody, or how would you actually talk with that individual to be able to build up either their self-confidence or their understanding of how much they are valued as an individual?
Here's the biggest thing that I found, and this sounds incredibly simple, and it is simple, but it's not easy. I'm sure you've heard that before. Boy, that's simple. It's not easy though. And the thing for me that I've discovered, and to this day still remind myself of all the time, is forgiveness. My way of putting it out there to myself, first of all, and then to anyone else I interact with, is no matter what it appears to me, especially with someone else or even internally, at that given moment, at that here now moment, they're doing the very best that they can. And you know something? If they could do better, they would. So the whole thing is, again, dealing with what you've got control of, which is your own attitude towards yourself. If you do not give yourself a break, if you cannot start to drop the walls and forgive yourself, the world will not give you what you will not give yourself. That plain and simple. Again, that whole energetic exchange. So if you cannot forgive yourself, if you cannot give yourself a break, if you cannot relax a little bit, and I'm telling you this as a person who, again, I nursed a parent through a nervous breakdown. She was a person who worried herself to death. Ironic, funny story is Jerry, my partner who passed. She and I went to Hawaii several times in the early 2000s. I won a few trips through business. We also went on our own. And my mother said to me, "Boy, I would love to go with you or go on my own to Hawaii, but I'm too nervous. And the only way you'll ever get me there is in a little box." Prophecy. Because once she died in 2002, it took her cremains, and a year later, Jerry and I flew them to Maui, and then we took a hop over to the Big Island of Hawaii, and I got permission from a place she loved to drink their coffee in Kona. I scattered her ashes amongst the coffee trees in
Mm.
Kona, Hawaii, where I feel very good about it because it's like her body and her spirit is still growing amongst the trees. So again, she did worry herself to death. That was the way that she exited this world. So if you're going to be a person who worries, and you cannot take that deep breath, give yourself the tiniest of breaks, it will get better. It will get better. I've been through things like this before, and I've always been able to get and even understand, Tim. You don't get at the bottom of a canyon and go, "I'm going to get out of here." Bend your legs and jump and get right out of the
Yeah,
canyon.
exactly, exactly.
You work your way out the same way you worked yourself in. The funny part is when you realize where you're at, which is the very first thing, and then you say, "I am going to get out of this." It's almost like whatever you want to call it, God, spirit, the universe, they start to cooperate with you. They start to give you helping hands, aid that you didn't know was even available to you. So again, the biggest thing that I've learned going with whether it be the poem or interacting with people in any way, shape, or form is the world will not give you or not respond to you if you will not give yourself that kind of love, that kind of respect, that kind of break. It's got to start with you. And that's where the whole idea of interacting with people, whether it be with the poems, with anything else, that's my biggest thing that I've taken out. And again, simple, but not easy, because even if you've meditated every day, even if you've journaled every day, you still will have those dips. You'll still get in a rut, and the world will respond to you, and you've got to go, okay, let's
Let's
just
take it. Yeah.
take a breath
Yep.
and understand this is nothing we haven't been at before. Maybe a different costume, maybe a different flavor, but we've been here before. And we've always gotten out of it. And it starts here and now by me going, we're going to get out of this. And I can chill a little bit on this and start to forgive myself.
Yeah. And I would even add to that too, aspect of whatever age, whomever was listening right now, whatever age you are, you've taken 20, 30, 40, 50 years of learning to be and act and operate in a certain manner. So you're not going to end up just all of a sudden making the decision that you're going to be totally different and that you're going to jump out of the canyon like what Rich said. It's just not going to happen because you've taken 20 or 30 or however many years you've been alive to learn how to act and operate. Yes, you can change. Yes, you can grow out of that, but it's not going to happen overnight. And so with this one aspect too, the other thing you mentioned forgiveness, but you hinted towards the especially with your mom about the anxiety and the fear that holds people back from making some of these decisions or possibly taking some of the actions. So can you speak just briefly towards that? I know forgiveness of yourself is a key element, but there is also that element of I'm afraid, what if I fail? What if it does, what if it, I mean, you can go down the what ifs that are a mile long, but that's still at the end of the day is fear and it prevents people from moving forward. So can you speak a little bit towards that?
Sure, definitely. And it's funny because you said something that I learned a long time ago, and it's again, you've it's amazing when you start to understand how habitual you are and how habitual we all are. So you said those key words, what if? And guess what? Everything that you find in life, no matter what, it's polarity. It's on both ends of a stick. So you said, what if I fail? What if things go wrong? What if black? What if negative? What if darker? What if horrific? There's also the other side of what if this eases up? What if I can possibly see this a different way? What if some help comes that I couldn't possibly have expected, but there it is, and it gave me a little bit of light. You have to again be more conscious, more aware, not scared. Choose not to be scared of where you are right now, here and now, because that's the only time you're living is right here, right now. Period. There is nothing else. If it's in the past, Tim, and you're bringing it into your here and now, you're doing that by choice.
Hmm.
Yeah, but things always work out that way for me. Well, yeah, if you keep responding that way, it's almost like you're playing the card and you're laying it down on the table. Go, I'm going to play this card again and I'm going to play this card again. Start to say, what if there's a different card I can play? And I guarantee that no matter how dark, desperate, sad things are, if you decide to, you can find examples that fly in the face of that, even if they're isolated. And guess what? If there's 100 things and 99 are wrong or 99 are bad or 99 suck, if you got the one that if you think about it will start to feel better, not necessarily good, better, an improvement, and you start to dwell on that, it will tend to fill up more of your light. It will illuminate through your memory, through your mind, through your heart in a way that you will feel an internal shift. And at the moment, that's got to be enough because, again, the world will start to respond to you. The energy of whatever you put out there will start to respond back to you. And that's the part where trusting comes in. Go, okay, it can get better. It did in the past. Why couldn't it happen again? What if it happens again? That's your power. I've said to people have been like, yeah, but. I'm saying, yeah, but you're doing yeah, but negatively. How about doing yeah, but positively? Or better yet, instead of saying yeah, but, say yeah. Not yeah, but yeah, and things can get better. Yeah, and I've been here before and things have eased up. Yeah, and as opposed to throwing that butt in there, I always tell people, get your butt out of the way.
That's so true. That's so
It
true.
really is. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's all becoming conscious of thing. And that's for me where the daily meditation, the daily journaling, the poem, that's what's helping me because again, I'm always able to go back and gain my own perspective. It was my perspective at that time. And I can go back and look at it and go, that moment that served me well, it might serve me well now, or in the past it served me well, but that is beyond me now. And I've got a different way of looking at that.
Yeah. And so here's what I want to do here as we kind of come down to a close here, but let's tie this back together with the journaling and with the poems and the fact that you're actually reflecting and taking the time to look back and where you're at. When you go back, well, and let me rephrase this. Let me put it in a different way. I don't know why we are this way, but as humans, we tend to look at just the negative, the what if on the black side, the negative, we tend to just think of all of the negative things. We don't for some reason, we just don't always remember the good. We tend to forget about whatever it was that was good or joyful or with the enjoyment that we get out of that. So tying this together with your journaling and with your poems, when you've taken that time to be able to reflect back, how has that impacted your perspective for the positive and for the good things? And are you able to do that because of the journaling and because of the poems?
Yes. Here's the value. Like, for example, yesterday, the night before, I could not sleep. I had been working on this year's poem. I put it out there on my blog. I actually give an explanation of what I was going through or experiencing when I created the poem, that particular version of it. And again, because this poem is centered on the emotions around the passing of Jerry, my partner, my mate, I was buzzing. It brought up a torrent of energy. So when I tried to relax and go to sleep, I couldn't.
Mm,
I was literally laying in bed, vibrating. I do mean internally vibrating from head to toe, and nothing would relax. So I got virtually no sleep yesterday. When I sat after meditating yesterday, feeling like total crap, I wrote down, I think I'm going insane. I really think I'm going insane. I said, this is just horrible. But you know something? Much the same way that if you ate something bad, your body will do everything possible to disgorge that and get it out of your system. For me, admitting that, owning that, writing it, that was the beginning of the letting it go, disgorging it, evicting it from my experience. And by doing that, things started to chill out yesterday. I could already see the shift starting yesterday. Last night, I had a good night's sleep leading into what you and I were going to do today. And I wrote today, I said, okay, that passed. I feel much better. I have greater understanding that I gained from going through that. I'm glad that I did, as opposed to, boy, that really sucked. And I'm really, boy, that's horrible. I hope that never happens again. Well, again, the world is about focus, Tim. If you're
mhm.
focused on that, when I've talked to people, I've said, you drive? They go, of course. I said, so if you're driving down a road and your attention gets diverted, whether it be another vehicle, a road sign, or whatever, and you turn your head, I said, where does the car start to go? And they think about it. They go, yeah, I kind of like the car kind of start until I follow it. But yeah, it's a good thing the newer cars have the lane detection and everything because it helps to bring you out of it as it starts to beep and lets you know you're leaving your lane. I said, well, this is the same thing. You've got to understand that where your focus is locked on, that is where you are going
Mhm.
until you wake up and realize that this is where you're going. This is what you were focused on. So again, for me, what you were talking about, the daily thing is that daily thing of checking in, and again, it's okay to feel bad. Here's a big thing that people may have heard or may not have heard. There's a big difference between these two-word phrases. I am and I feel. I feel bad, but guess what? Feelings change. They're fluid. They go all the time. I am kind of locks it in. I am bad. I am just not a good person. I am a failure. You are literally playing out that card going forward that okay, the world's going to go, you said you were, so let's make sure that you see. I've had this talk with people and given them perspective. You can either be right or be happy. And people go, well, what would you prefer? I'd rather be right. I said, well, just understand that's a choice. And in being right, you're going to have to defend being right all the time because people are going to go there and say you're wrong, or you're going to have to alter your viewpoint. But if you're happy, you're willing to let crap go. You are. You're just willing to let it go because this isn't worth it. This isn't making me feel good. And guess what? Feeling good is all that really matters in terms of living a more fulfilled, a more easy, joyful life, a joyful experience. So that's when I talk to people. That's what I kind of share with them, understanding that they will either get it, not get it, accept it, not accept. That's not within my control.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I would actually add one more thing to that because I love this. I feel I am, but I would add one more thing is I believe because there's this
Okay.
aspect of yeah. Because I had actually a really really deep conversation with a really close person in my life, and some things that we both had were feelings of hurt. But we have the choice, and this is part of the I am aspect because I can choose to believe that that person did it with ill intent, or I can choose to believe that it was done either out of ignorance or out of the best. I mean, like, I can choose to believe that that person didn't have the intent to hurt in the way that they hurt, or I can choose to believe that that person, loves and cares for me. I can choose to believe that, or I can choose to feel something that was miscommunicated, misunderstood, misrepresented, wrong perspective. I mean, you go down that whole list, right? But I can choose to believe that. And so I love what you were saying there. And if I add that one thing to it, I can kind of see all of this stuff coming together in my mind. I am, and I believe my feelings are going to change. Just like you said, there's going to be an influx. There's going to be times when I'm tired and I'm going to feel things more deeply. And there's going to be times when situations and I'm emotionally drained or mentally drained. I'm going to feel that, but I can choose to believe something different. And I can choose to believe that I am fitting right into what you're saying.
Here's the thing. I believe is just simply I am that you keep repeating over and over and over and over again. And again, the world will make you right. The world will support your beliefs. That's when it becomes a belief. And the way I try to illustrate that to people is I say, write down the word creation, Creation. I said, fine, you've written it down. Now write down the word reaction, Reaction. I said, see the difference? It all depends how you see it.
Mm,
And they go, what are you talking about? I go, look at the letter C. They're exactly the same word. The only difference is where you place the C. So it depends how you see it.
yeah, that's 100% true. So true. So true. All right. So as we wind down here, what is, and we might have already had the mic drop moment, so that's okay. We might just have to repeat it. But what is one thing that you would hope somebody would walk away with from this conversation? And I'm sure we could talk about many other things, but what's on your heart that you would like, this is it? Don't miss this point.
You're never done. If you're still here, if you're still in the moment here now, you're not done. Now, if you believe I've got X amount of time behind me, I've lived so long, things can't change. I've already established this path, this rut, this whatever you want to call with your life. And I'll try to let them know that it's only locked in and over if you choose to see it that way. Now, again, simple, not easy. Because again, you were talking about beliefs. Well, after you've lived decades upon decades upon decades, you've got certain patterns that are pretty hard and fast at that point. You can see them a different way. You
Mm-hmm.
can create them a different way if you choose to. If you choose to. And a lot of people don't think they have that choice. That's a choice too. I don't have a choice. That's a choice. Seriously, it really is. Again, it all depends how you see it, whether you're going to create or you're going to react. And waking up to that, Tim, that shatters some people. If they've been locked and loaded, but all of a sudden they've come into the experience of this podcast where they're hearing this for the first time, or they happen to meet somebody who gives them this perspective, and they're even the tiniest bit open to receiving that perspective, and they start to dwell on it and think about it, it can shatter you. It really can. And a lot of people cannot handle that. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. That's just going to be the way that they live that particular life story.
Mm.
So no matter what they do, they're fine. Questions, are they happy?
Yeah.
That's the biggest question.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt about it. All right. So we've teased your poems. We've teased a lot of these different things that we've been talking about. So here's what I want to do is make sure that we give people a way to find where they're at and find where your poems are at. If people want to be able to connect with you or contact, how can they find these things?
Well, if they're interested in the poems, I put them out on a blog, and the blog is mostly at the moment. I haven't been as judicious with it as I had been in the past. I did use it in the past when my mother died, when my father died, when certain things happened in my life. But every single one of the 48 years of poems, including the new one, is at amazedamused.blogspot.com. So that's one way, because I've spread that out. I spread that out either through my written work, or also I put it out on certain sites like my Facebook page, on my LinkedIn page, things like that, or text it to people. So that's one of the first ways they can do it. And of course, they can find me, Rich Perrotti, on Facebook. I mean, I'm out there with this face, this persona, and it's all right there.
I got you. And we'll put those in the notes. So we're going to get that, so that, because that was a long one. And I'm sure everybody's listening is like, oh, shoot, I missed it. So just go to the notes, and we'll actually have that link to be able to go right directly to that blog site and be able to connect it that way. Anything else you want to add?
Would you mind if I read the poem that I just finished up this year with the composition for Christmas 2025?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is we're actually the whole page, the table behind me is all filled. This is literally what I'm going to be sending out to people. No card this year, but this is the poem I dedicated to people, but especially the energy of my girlfriend, my mate Jerry. So ironic it is at this time of year that in darkness we strive for the light. In candles, bright colors, and twinkling displays, we find comfort and beauty in their sight. Understand that it takes this gloom of the night to properly see the illume. Minus the contrast that blackness brings, it would fade like a tattered costume. Sometimes it takes what seems like a loss to realize that love never dies. The spirit within always beckons and appears in a differing guise. Ponder within this one question. Reveal your wisdom unfurled. Does the shadow of this world darken your heart, or does your heart enlighten the world? In the crush of traditions and presents, it feels like our love we exhaust. Strive not for a Christmas so perfect that its genuine meaning is lost. Power of love is forgiveness, and forgiveness begins with yourself. Judgment as dark and deep as the night can be released and put up on the shelf. So fear not, as the angel announced long ago, for what is not love is but fear. Let the light of your love go forth and shine bright, spreading tidings of joy and great cheer.
All right, and as we end on that, if you want to hear a few more of those, you can obviously go to the link that's in the comments, and we'll get you connected that way. Thank you, Rich, for being with us. I appreciate the time and taking it out of your busy schedule. I really, truly appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, for those listening, maybe check us out on YouTube. You can actually see our lovely faces and some of that nonverbal communication that we love to share so much. If you're listening, until next time, keep writing, crafting your story because it is important. You have a valuable story that needs to be shared. Love you guys, and we'll see you soon.